I'm going to go over Spectacular Spider-Man, number 189 and 200. Mary Jane comes to a grim Peter Parker staring at a jack-in-the-box. What pops out is a Green Goblin that says "Gotcha" on the card. Harry Osborn has regained his memory and remembers that Peter is Spider-Man. At the same time, Harry's wife, Liz Allen, and their son, Normie Osborn, along with the Molten Man, Liz's cousin, are engulfed in sleeping gas and kidnapped by the Green Goblin. We've hardly had a chance to breathe after all this vulture mess, and now it's Harry again. Harry. Now, I can't believe it. No, not Harry. The Green Goblin! Mary Jane is freaked out over a spider suit on the bed, but it just explodes like a harmless party flavor into paper because Harry is just missing with them. They go to warn Liz about Normie, but they are far too late. Now, there are two things that really stood out in Spectacular Spider-Man at this time that I remember. And one was the amazing amount of panels that were used in most of these stories, sometimes like 9 to 12 a page. And two, the many panels that were used to tell a story without any dialogue whatsoever. All of these happened quite frequently to stand out. It's only in Peter's dialogue that I come to finally understand that Peter and Harry were actually best friends before he became the Green Goblin. In fact, Harry had just learned that his father was the Green Goblin, which meant that he killed his friend Gwen, and realizing at the same time that his friend was Spider-Man. Now, that caused him to have a mental breakdown and occasionally put on the Green Goblin outfit for a while, but he always managed to come back to sanity. Mary Jane, meanwhile, pretends that she had a fight with Peter just to check up on Aunt May because she's afraid that she might have been kidnapped or hurt by Harry. However, she feels bad that she's lying to the dearest soul she's ever known. Next are the emotional stakes involved. Normie is confused that his mother's crying, and Liz is scared of her husband, but at the same time sad of what he's become. Of course, Normie doesn't understand anything and thinks it's just his dad in a funny Halloween costume. Harry claims that his father's path of power is what he should have chose, but his father's major mistake was abandoning his family. He claims he won't hurt the ones he loved like his father did, but together, with their power, they can accomplish anything. Now, he alludes to the Molten Man that with his power, they can do everything, and he's actually trying to create a supervillain family. He actually wants to go and do crime with all of them. This terrifies everyone but Normie. Interestingly, Spider-Man appears. Well, you're here now, there's nothing I can do about it, so you might as well come in. Sit down, there's quite a bit we have to talk about. He then goes back to anger with, "Eat!" Spider-Man, hoping to help the others, complies. Harry thinks Spider-Man isn't happy because he sees their family all together and happy. Harry, however, thinks that Spider-Man is jealous of the Osborn family because he's an orphan that was left with a family that he never cared about and never cared about him. This isn't true, of course, but Harry's a little psycho at this point. However, Liz takes Normie in her arms and says that she will not let him become abused the way his father abused him. However, Harry just tricks the son into accepting him and then condemns Liz, saying that she's not one of us, for without the Osborn blood in her, she cannot be a part of the family. Yeah, so much for getting the family together, but then he keeps switching back and forth between the crazy. Spider-Man eventually has to take a hit from the Goblin Glider, for if he moved out of the way, it would collide with Harry and Normie, who is in his arms. Harry knows this and deliberately uses this against them, as this is how his father died, and he comments on it. Now we see how Harry took out the Molten Man earlier. He found his father's goblin formula that he was working on before he died to make his strength even more. Interestingly, I haven't read any Harry Green Goblin stories before this, So all I can assume from this is that he was just a regular human in the goblin outfit all these years, only this is the first time he actually had super strength. Harry is smart, even in his madness. You're frozen with fear, terrified that whatever move you will make the wrong one, and some poor innocent will suffer. You don't want to hurt me, but you don't want the big, bad goblin to hurt the people you love either. So instead of doing something, you just take it and take it. In the end, Spider-Man stands up and says he will no longer allow his family to be threatened. Do you hear me? Not any more! Go ahead, tell the world about me. Scream it from the rooftops. I'll deal with it. But even in the end, it's not over. I know the identity of the man behind the mask. I know who Spider-Man is. And I'm going to tell the world. But not just yet. The story ends on a sad note, indicating that perhaps Harry is lost forever, and that there is no coming back from his madness. Now, I skipped a lot of the dialogue, but the theme of abuse is really well done, and shows Harry as a tormented character that grew up to be another abuser of his son and wife. Now, it's even in the dialogue. After all these years of feeling so small, so helpless, I'm finally above them all. I've got the power to crush anyone who gets in my way. Here it becomes obvious that Harry has a lot of built-up anger toward his father for neglecting and abusing him, and it's obvious that he would strike back at him if he came back. Yes, I know he comes back from the dead eventually, but that's beside the point. Even Liz doesn't want to call the police at the end because she says, I love him, but Spider-Man says to do it because she loves him, something that is applicable to an abuse victim. Liz is basically a battered wife, but not in the physical sense, in the mental sense. And also, it doesn't look like Normie's being affected, but he's starting to have severe emotional issues with this. Normie is angry at Spider-Man, as you see his first angry face in his entire lifetime of being alive. In the end, Normie is angry at Spider-Man for beating up his father, and you can clearly see the cycle of violence starting to begin again, as now Normie Osborn looks to be fostering a hatred for Spider-Man. This is to show that anger and violence is something that will continue to happen if it's not something that's addressed soon. In fact, it always pissed me off when Normie would just later show up disassembling Spider-Man action figures. I'm like, Jesus Christ, have we not gotten beyond this by now? It even showed up in one of the Brand New Day storylines, and I was like, really? No character development whatsoever? You think that she would be afraid for her son to grow up to be like Green Goblin number 3, but instead I guess she just accepts it? I don't know. Hell, he even becomes the Green Goblin in the Spider-Girl series, but at least then he actually learns from his mistakes and becomes a hero afterwards. Anyway, if that wasn't sad enough, you now get a story with Aunt May as she reflects on Ben's death and how it continues to haunt her to this day. You see what you never saw in the origin, Aunt May holding her husband's hand until he died. Yeah. And how she started to see Spider-Man as the villain behind the whole mess until she begrudgingly started to accept him as a hero. It's another Spider-Man origin from someone else's perspective, one that continues to be really well done in these anniversary issues. Also, there's a free poster of Spider-Man fighting the Hobgoblin. This story, and the next, is written by J.M. DeMatteis. He was one of the first writers I ever recognized because the stories were just that good and really got to me as a child. I was never a fan of Spectacular Spider-Man's art, because it continued to get really bizarre with all kinds of crazy lines jettisoning themselves off of people's bodies, along with incomprehensible background art. I mean, I know the art style was evolving, but it was just an art style I could never get into as a child and even today. But Spectacular Spider-Man was one of my favorite issues to look forward to reading just because of the stories inside of it. So in Spectacular Spider-Man 200, a good 11 issues after the last one, the Green Goblin returns. It starts with an immediate shocker. Mary Jane is taken away by the Green Goblin. Apparently, Harry was in a mental institute, but not for very long. I guess all he did was kidnap his family and try to kill a family member, so it doesn't count. Anyway, Peter is frantically searching for Mary Jane, believing she's been kidnapped because Harry's only been out for one day. Harry takes her to the bridge where Gwen Stacy died. You're not going to get any begging or pleading from me. I'm not afraid to die. Mary Jane, how could you even say such a thing? I'd never hurt you. You're my friend." Harry misses Gwen, but through this conversation he still refuses to believe that his father was involved in Gwen's death, stating that it was Spider-Man that covered it up and blamed his father. You start to learn more of the past relationship that Gwen, Harry, Mary Jane, and Peter were all best friends in college, and can they ever be that way again? However, when Peter sees Harry near his wife, his first instinct is to attack him. Mary Jane tells him to stop, and Harry says that she has nothing to fear from him. It's hard to really blame Spider-Man because this guy is just, manipulating him all the time, so you think he'd be a little crazy once he sees this guy near his wife. With Harry gone, Peter says they have no options, and they're both scared of what he might do in the future. Confused and frustrated, they have no idea and nowhere to turn. Then we see Harry hasn't gotten it together. He threatens Liz when she tells him to get sleep because he thinks she's acting like he's a weakling. Then he greets Peter as the Green Goblin in the street, pretending to just be out for a stroll. In costume? No law against running around in colorful long johns, is there? Then he appears to Jameson as the Green Goblin, stating he's starting a new business and wants Jameson to help advertise it. Peter walks in, because this is his boss's office. "Peter and I are old chums, just like you and my father. We used to share a, what did we call it, swinging pad back in our college days." Harry says if Jameson helps him, he'll give him juicy details on Spider-Man. Later, we're told that Harry's been doing a lot of stunts as the Green Goblin, and everyone is writing it off as a publicity stunt or an eccentric billionaire. Peter notices Harry watching him as the Green Goblin, and gets involved in a fight. However, Green Goblin backs away immediately. "Batter me to a pulp, but when you're done, I will file a complaint to the police, and after that, I'll call a press conference. Who knows what juicy tidbits I'll be in the mood to share. What do you want from me? I want to make your life utterly miserable. Then, when you least suspect it, maybe tomorrow, maybe in a year, maybe in 5 years, I'm going to kill you. Or maybe I'll just tell the world and let your other enemies do it for me." Harry tells his father's paintings that he's going to get all of society's elite to his party at his new foundation and then blow them all away to show just how deadlier his new goblin is, more deadlier than his father. However, he won't make the same mistake that he did and abandon his family. Mary Jane tries to talk to Liz to try to tell him that Harry has a problem that needs addressing and needs help. However, like an abuse victim, she refuses to listen to her and kicks Mary Jane out of the house. However, Mary Jane does not stop there. She actually talks to Harry and brings up the conversation that they had a few weeks ago. She tells him that their lives have never been easy. Both her and Harry are victims of abuse. Peter is an orphan who lost his family, and Gwen had lost a lot of her family members as well. They're all children of suffering, and yet her and Peter have managed to rise above it because of their love for each other. In fact, she says that Peter still wants his friend back just the way that she does, and that they can still work things out and try to become friends again. Harry hesitates, as if listening to what Mary Jane is telling him, about to finally listen and turn up his identity for good. But then he tells her that power is the real answer, and tells Mary Jane to leave, for it's too late for love. Spider-Man is searching the new foundation around this time, and Harry shows up, and they start a fight. Peter brings up the problems they had as roommates when they were living together, and he says they always found a way to work it out, and still retain their friendship. But Harry refuses to listen, and paralyzes Spider-Man in a moment of weakness. However, his words have really gotten to him, and now the Green Goblin is ready to kill himself along with Peter to stop the cycle that haunts them. He then remembers that Mary Jane and Normally are still inside as the bomb's about to go off. Peter begs for him to save them because he can't move. Harry saves Mary Jane and Normally and says they're safe from the bomb. "You left Peter there to die?" "Yes. No, I don't know. I don't know!" In the end, Harry takes Peter out of the house right before it explodes. However, all the sweats and accidental fallings that Harry has had recently are a result of the new Green Goblin formula destroying his body. "I did it, Peter, just the way you would have done it. A real hero. Why, Harry, why did you come back for me? What else could I do? You're my best friend." And just like that, Harry dies in front of Peter, Mary Jane, and his son Normie. This comic is really sad. Mental problems are something that are normally really poorly handled in not just comic books, but movies and cartoons. Interestingly enough, it is Mary Jane that is the hero this time around. She is the one that gets Harry to realize his mistakes and able to get him to turn back to the side of good right before the end. You see, Mary Jane isn't just Spider-Man's wife or a supporting character. She is the second main character in the Spider-Man universe. Harry Osborn died as I was getting into comics, and then he returned as I started to give up to him, which is unfortunate because I think that's the only good thing that came out of the Brand New Day saga. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to compliment that storyline. It just happened. That's it for the anniversary issues. You can tell I skipped, there was another anniversary issue that was issue 100 of Spider-Man, but that was a god-awful storyline, so not worth reviewing. It's only notable for introducing the spider armor, which shows up in like every video game. If anyone's interested in solid Spider-Man issues, you should check these out. They're very cheap online on eBay or at a large comic book shop, and they all have different varying stories, as well as each of them containing Spider-Man's origin, but from someone else's perspective, whether that be Aunt May, Peter himself, Spider-Man's agent, or Jameson, and a little bit of Mary Jane. Other interesting facts like his powers and how he describes them to Mary Jane, as well as the history of how Gwen and Peter and Mary Jane and Harry are all friends from the Flashback tale and the Green Goblin issue, are all really good at not only establishing them for new readers, but also showing you tales of dramatic friendship and madness, illusion and redemption. These are all issues that you should read. So fun facts about comic organizing. Now, I don't know how most people do this, but when I read my comics, I put them in order by story order. So if there's a 3-part storyline in Spectacular Spider-Man, that comes next, followed by one of the other Spider-Man stories, preferably one that was released probably the month before those storylines. This way, and you can read them in chronological order. I mean, even when I find him crossing over with other characters, he's placed in the month that occurred in between the issues, but not between storylines. Hell, and even newer stuff that comes out, like Secret Wars, it came out in 2010, but I placed it behind my 1990s comics because it's a storyline that took place in the 80s. Now, I can't be the only one who organizes my comics this way, because otherwise how else are you supposed to read them?